Welcome back to our series on Bach's Orgelbüchlein. Today we're looking at one of the Christmas pieces, Christum, sollen, loben, schon. It's just 15 bars long. It's in the usual four-part harmony that we associate with Orgelbüchlein, and yet for some reason it feels like a really big piece. And we'll have a look at just why. But the main thing which I want to look at today is the performance style. If you listen to different performances of this work, different recordings, you'll be struck by the fact that it's often played in one of two entirely different ways. Either it's played in a very grand manner with a large registration, rather loud, or it's played in a very restrained manner with a quiet registration. And again, I'd like to look at why this is the case, and to see whether we can draw any conclusions about which is the right, if there is a right and wrong way of doing it. So first of all, the hymn. It's a great hymn of praise by Luther, but it's disappeared from the hymn book, so it's not a hymn that you'll ever really get a chance to sing in all probability. In the hymn, Christ is to be praised as far as the sun shines and to the ends of the earth. There's a couple of verses in the middle which refer to the Holy Mother, to worldly poverty and to the cradle, but by the last couple of verses we're back with choirs of angels singing God's praises and to a doxology offering praise and glory in all eternity. So it's even the verses in the middle which are quieter, the verses referring to the Holy Mother and to poverty and so on, even there are overtones of praise. So praise never really leaves the hymn. And that is definitely the impression that we get as a whole. Why then do we sometimes hear quiet and restrained performances of the work? I think potentially what people are referring to there is the title itself, Christum, sollen, loben, schon. And schon in that context is not the schon of modern day German, which is partly a kind of filler word, which often means already or something like that. It is an old spelling or an old version of the modern word schön, meaning beautiful. So Christ is to be praised beautifully. And I think that is what people are referring to, this idea of beauty as expressed in quiet restraint and beautiful stops. And I can well understand that as an approach. Having said all that, the hymn is unambiguously one of praise all the way through. And while I understand the argument of the beauty, nevertheless, I think we can praise beautifully while still making relative lot of noise. I still have actually the copy of Orgelbüchlein that I learnt these pieces from as a teenager, and quite a lot of them have got penciled notes in by Peter Herford. And in this particular case, he says, play it with a grand jeu registration. I won't do exactly that today, but I will play it certainly with a 16-foot and a mixture and a fairly grand and bright sound. This is one of the few chorale preludes in Orgelbüchlein that gets a tempo marking, adagio. There are actually three which are marked adagio and one which is marked largo. And we talk a little bit in the episode about tempo, about what these markings actually mean. But I think that the best translation of adagio in this context is take it easy. Oddly enough, I talk at some length in the episode on Jesu meine Freude, which is the preceding prelude, which is marked largo, about tempo there, and point out that the adagio tempo is by no means slower than the largo tempo in Jesu meine Freude. I think that the difference here is that the piece is unambiguously 4 beats in a bar. Although it's semiquavers, although it's adagio, I think it wants the crotchet beats to be in focus, so that the scales will have a sense of sweeping inevitability, a sense of direction. And that is at the heart of the piece itself. So we don't want to play it painfully slow. because then we're in danger of losing that sense of direction. I said earlier on that although the piece is of relatively normal dimensions, it nevertheless feels big, and there are all kinds of reasons for that. It starts with that huge range, more than 4.5 octaves from the bottom D in the pedal up to the B flat in the top. And the piece in general has a very wide range. And then again we have all those scales, long scales, often of 1.5 octaves or so. And the harmonies themselves are very dense. They're quite often quite low down in the range, which means that we get a sense of thickness and a sense of solidity. So all these things, I think, contribute to making it feel big. The chorale melody itself is in the alto voice, and unless you know the chorale melody in advance, or unless the listener knows the chorale melody in advance, they are going to have a great deal of difficulty in picking out the melody, in identifying the melody from the middle of that texture. That's not our problem. We need obviously to articulate the melody, put in the quaver rest in between the lines and so on. But at the end of the day, it's not our problem whether people can hear it or not. That's Bach's problem, it's Bach's decision. And we have to just play the piece as it is and trust that people will get out of it what they intend to do. The last couple of bars appear to call for double pedaling. If that is the case, then it's unique within Orgelbüchlein and very, very rare in Bach in general. Let's just have a quick look at it. Obviously, in the score, in Bach's manuscript, there's no indication directly of what is pedal and what isn't. The whole thing's written on 2 staves, and it doesn't, of course, spell out a pedal part separately. It's written, of course, beautifully, clearly, and without corrections, suggesting that Bach has written it first somewhere else and then copied it into the manuscript. Now, it's perfectly possible to play the upper part of the double pedaling with the left hand, and there seems some doubt about the double pedaling at all. There are 2 things which suggest it. Firstly, that the scale in the lower pedal part in bar 14 leads up to that E, so the part writing wouldn't really make sense unless the upper E is played on the pedals. And then again there's that little bracket which seems to indicate that the 2 parts belong together. But it's perfectly possible to lay it out like this. So this really is a case where the accumulated force of established tradition makes it very hard for us to rethink it. But you can certainly challenge the accepted thinking if you want to, although I won't be doing here. I will play the double pedaling.